I want to provide some short overview of the program. This idea actually was Susan's idea, and it started with this thinking of, in our field, women students are disproportionately more likely to leave academia than their male counterparts. And causes of this are complex and systematic. We don't want to go into the causes, but definitely improved mentoring could be a solution for this to help women students to go to the academic path more. So we decided to submit this as a proposal for the INFORMS DEI Ambassador project, and it got selected. So for this first year, our idea was to just stick with academia, so choose a small cohort of women PhD students who they like to go to academia, and pair them with mentors and have some workshops for them, and basically guide them into this path. We're hoping that for future years, we are able to expand this to both academia and industry. And again, a huge thank you to all of our mentors. As I said, they're very busy, but they still were able to find some time in their calendar for us. So we're hoping that this will be a great year for the mentees, and they're able to learn a lot from our mentors. In terms of the objectives of the programs, at the end of the year, we're hoping that the participants will form a community of peer women across the institution, having a network of connections with senior women across institutions that they will recognize as mentors and advocates. We're hoping that they will be equipped with professional and self-care skills, and finally feel confident in their abilities to succeed in our profession. In terms of the timeline of the program, so this is the March meeting, which mainly is going to be about pairing you with the mentors and networking. The May meeting is going to be about preparing for the job market. Some of you might be on the job market this year, so we wanted to do this early on so that during the summer you can start working on your applications. And if you're not in the job market, this is going to be useful for you in future years. The July meeting is mainly going to be on family, health, and wellness. For September, we want to have a meeting, and mainly that's going to be on presentation skills. And we also want to have a practice of a research presentation. So hopefully this will be something that you can present in INFORMS in the annual meeting in October. And then the November meeting is going to be generally on academic life. So you are going to have monthly meetings with your mentors. And the other events and activities that we're going to have would be contributed blog posts to the INFORMS diversity community. So we want to basically have a summary of our meetings and have them as blog posts on the diversity community blog so that everyone can use it. And then finally, at the annual meeting, we want to have a celebratory dinner between all of us so that we get to meet each other in person. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about mentoring relationship here, and the materials that I want to present now. Part of it is from the mentor match materials for INFORMS, so you might have seen them before. For the mentees, there are a couple tips about how to get the best use from your mentor and the meetings that you have with your mentor. So the first thing is that in general, be proactive and take initiatives. Many times it's hard to send that first email or to go and introduce yourself during like a conference to a speaker or to anyone that you like to be in touch with. But don't think that everyone is gonna come to you and ask you to introduce yourself. So you have to initiate many times. And even this is true at like a higher level when you wanna even give talks, give research talks later on when you get a position. It could be that you should initiate that, and you can send an email to people who you know in different universities and ask them that if you have presentations or opportunities in your school, I can come and present for you. The reason that I'm making this example is to just tell you that, yeah, you're going to initiate many times even at the higher level, and not at, just as a student, but later on as a faculty as well. The second tip is identify and communicate your motivations and objectives. So you basically need to know to some level what you like to do, what is your objective, and what are the type of the advice that you want to get from your mentor, so that you can have right questions for your mentor when you meet with the mentor. Be open and receptive to feedback. The goal of this is to learn. So when you get a feedback, be open to it. And try to implement it in terms of the advice that you're getting. Ask questions, obviously. If you don't ask questions, you're not going to hear what you'd like to hear. So asking many questions. So each time that you want to meet with your mentor, it's good to have a list of questions that you might have. And then with this, you can initiate the discussion, and then hopefully the discussion will go to the direction that you like. Obviously, if you disagree, say so honestly and discuss alternatives. It's okay to do that. This is part of the process. And finally, follow thought with plans you make in collaboration with your mentor. So it's good to basically have plans based on the advice that you're getting, and kind of using what you're learning in your plan for future. For mentors, all of our mentors are very pro here, but just a couple tips that we had was that communicate your expectations and availability, especially because you're busy when you wanna set the time of your monthly meeting. That's definitely important. Ask and answer questions openly and honestly. We like this to work. So hopefully giving practical advice to the mentees. Suggest action based on mentees' goals. So the step-by-step things that they can do in near future, so that they go to the path that is correct for them. And finally, offer encouragement and constructive feedback. Any question here about anything? Okay, so in terms of the homework that you have for the mentor part for our next meeting is scheduling the monthly meeting time with your mentor. So you can initiate this, send an email to your mentor. You're going to know your mentor shortly. The other thing is that you can work through INFORMS Mentee Goal Setting Worksheet. This is a worksheet that we're going to send you in an email. So you can work with that worksheet and see if you're basically meeting the goals in terms of mentoring. Identify 3 to 5 short and long-term goals for the relationship. And this is going to be this year. So your goals should be reasonable for a period of 1 year. And finally, meet at least once, ideally twice, if your mentor has the time, before our May workshop.
About what is networking. I know when I was a grad student, I sort of thought that all of my advice and guidance and professional development should come primarily from my faculty advisor. And now I think with a little bit more wisdom, I realize that actually you need a much broader network than that. And it can be a little bit daunting when you're a student to create such a network. So networking is the establishment, but also the maintenance of contacts along many different axes of your personal and professional life. So I think we often think of our peers, so the students with whom you're going through your graduate program with as members of your professional network, and your supervisors, professors that you take classes from, but also as you start teaching your own classes or being a teaching assistant, or as you go off into academic careers, you're going to have students, and you might be surprised that over time those students also become members of your professional network. In fact, I met Banafsheh because she was in graduate school with one of my former students. And so, so your students then become an avenue for you to make wonderful professional contacts as well. Clients, if you're doing sponsored research, or if you do consulting, then your clients also become part of your professional network, and other professional colleagues at your institutions. So these are contacts that you make and relationships that you maintain who can provide you with advice and connections throughout your personal and professional lives. I think it's important to note that this also includes people that maybe at the current moment seem unrelated to your career. life has its interesting way of weaving back upon itself. And so, you know, people that maybe are in some different part of an institution currently, later on, you might be working very closely with them. And so that's just something to keep in mind throughout, that you never really know where life is going to take you. So why do we network? I mean, I think one of the things that's really important, especially at the stage that you're all currently in, is the role of a champion. This is somebody who can say, gosh, you know, I think you'd be a great fit for this position, or I would like to recommend you for this award, or I think you should consider moving in this direction. Somebody who is impressed by you and is willing to be an advocate on your behalf. Likewise, somebody who can serve as a reference for you when you're applying for jobs and other opportunities. Somebody who can let you know about those jobs and opportunities. And then, you know, like we're trying to do through this program, somebody who can provide you with mentoring, which is, you know, general guidance about what types of avenues are available to you and how you might consider making decisions among them. These are sort of, I think, those first four, I think, are some of the obvious benefits of networking, especially when you're early on in your career. As you advance in your career, then you start realizing that there are some other benefits of networking, which include collaboration, which is, I think, one of the nicest things that's happened in my career over the past few years is the research collaboration that I've established with Banafsheh. It's nice to do work with people you enjoy working with. And so you also develop friendships that way. So, you know, networking, we can often think of it as like, you know, well, what's in it for me? What could I possibly gain by getting to know these people? And at the start of your career, I think you're going to find, and this can be a challenge, that you might gain more than you give in your professional relationships. When you're a student, you're getting a lot of advice. People are advocating for you. They're writing letters for you. Sometimes that can feel a little bit uncomfortable, like you're imposing on somebody. Oh, I don't want to ask this person to write a letter because they're so busy. Or I don't want to ask this person for advice because it's going to take up so much of their time for them to help me. But I think the wonderful thing about networking is that over time, many relationships become mutually beneficial and mutually rewarding, that you become professional colleagues. You're no longer a student as time elapses, but now you're a professional colleague with these people, and these relationships can become very rewarding. So networking for me is really, really hard. I like to stick to myself. I'm not an outgoing person. I'm pretty shy. So I'm sure there are lots more networking strategies, but these are the ones that I think feel at least like low-hanging fruit that I could recommend. So the first thing is, you know, when you're going to different conferences, that's just a great time to meet people. And sometimes those conferences just feel really overwhelming, to me anyway. So one thing that I've done that surprisingly worked was just to ask questions. Go to talks and ask questions. And those questions that you ask then turn into longer conversations about mutual research interests and other types of things. There was even one time where I was in a prize presentation for one of the INFORMS competitions, and I asked questions, and then somebody afterwards said, hey, would you like to join this committee? And now suddenly that question that I asked became an avenue to get involved, get engaged on a committee for INFORMS, which then allowed me to meet 5 other people through INFORMS that had similar interests. So that relates also to the second item, is which is to get involved in subdivisions. So this is an INFORMS organized event. There are other professional associations as well, but within INFORMS, there are technical subdivisions like the Health Applications Society, just to name one. There are also chapters, like student chapters through your university, and also geographic chapters. And then special interest fora, like the Minority Interest Group, the Forum for Women in OR and MS, and the Junior Faculty Interest Group. And these are all, you can think of them as like little clubs within INFORMS. INFORMS is really huge, but then when you get to the level of a subdivision, it's like a club of people that you have something in common with. And so by getting involved in those subdivisions, maybe by offering to organize a session at the annual meeting, or offering to join the board, or do some other volunteer work in these subdivisions, then you start to get to know people. And that can be a really helpful way to network. The next one is, sorry, oh, I wasn't, yeah, here we go. The next item is, was some advice that I put an asterisk next to because it's sort of problematic advice. But when I was in my first 2 years as a faculty member, there was a professional development group through another professional association that I'm involved with. And at the end of that workshop, a very senior, well-intentioned person gave a lecture, which was basically entitled, "Say Yes." And the gist of it was that when opportunities come your way, take them, because by saying yes to these different opportunities, you never know how they're going to weave back on each other and lead you to interesting things along the way. So I took that advice, and I think in general that was helpful advice. But the caveat is that particularly as women, and particularly women of color, are often asked to do a lot of things. And so saying yes can be detrimental when you're asked to do a lot of service that may or may not help you advance your career. So I think maybe better advice would be to have an open mind about opportunities that come your way, and be judicious about, which things do I take on, which things are going to help me, which things maybe I want to save for later after I get tenure or something like that. But to recognize that every opportunity that comes your way has a potential benefit in terms of networking, but it also comes at the cost of your time. So your network consists of several axes. And this is, I think when I was a student, I thought it was really just, okay, my advisor is my network. But now I realize there's a lot of different axes in terms of networks within my own institution, and consisting of champions or people I can turn to for constructive feedback on my work, professional development opportunities, networks within our disciplinary community like subdivisions who can give feedback or present me with opportunities for new collaborations and initiatives. And then also a community of peers, which is extremely important for finding emotional support and people that you can feel safe talking to about the challenges you're facing. And an additional benefit of communities of peers is accountability networks. Who's going to say, maybe you should say no to that committee that you've been invited to because you've got that paper you're trying to get out. And sometimes you need a friend to sort of keep you on task. So those are just some general strategies as you're starting to think about your network, and maybe thinking more broadly about networking. Next slide, please. So just like you have some homework related to the mentorship relationship, we also have some homework for you between now and our next workshop to think about these different strategies that we listed, and we'll be sharing these slides after the workshop as well, and to consciously make an effort to try to engage in one of them, and maybe pick one that's a little bit uncomfortable for you, and try to do that strategy between now and May, and see how it works for you. And then also to think about these different axes of networking, and to think about, who would you consider to be a champion at your institution? Who would you consider to be your accountability friend? Who would you consider to be somebody who can offer you constructive feedback on your work? And try for each of the different items listed to identify people in your network, or to identify gaps where maybe trying to cultivate that axis of your network would be beneficial.